my name is Lyle Stephenson. I'm the Marsh Care Solutions Practice Leader and I look after predominantly Australasia. I'm here today to talk to you about the state of the insurance market and the impact that that will have on your organisation, particularly if you are an aged care or disability care provider, and how you can actually navigate the upcoming changes. So I just want to talk about the global market sentiment. We have done, Marsh has actually been collecting data since 2012, every quarter, on the changes to the insurance market around the world. We focus on three key areas of the insurance program, which is your liability program, your financial services line, so that includes directors and officers liability insurance, medical malpractice, professional indemnity insurance, and we also look at property. The global market sentiment, particularly over the last 18 months or so, has been what we call a hardening market. So the insurer sentiment out there is that there's a lot of pressure on profitability, referral to head offices to get decisions made, and increasing premiums. We have also had a lot of issues around the world, though obviously there's COVID specifically, but there's also, we've had in Australia, we have had cyclones, storms, we had the major bushfire season. And because insurance actually affects us all around the world, we're actually looking at that from a global perspective first, and then we'll come back to Pacific and then come back to the aged and disability care industry specifically. Global commercial insurance premiums have increased from a negative position in 2015 up to double digits or plus in the last quarter. So this is actually a sharp increase, and this is actually on a global basis. This is all the countries around the world. And this will, you'll be wondering, what does this have to do with me? It means that your insurance policy, your insurance premiums are not just affected by what's happening in your particular organisation, but it actually is a global conversation. In the Pacific, predominantly Australia and New Zealand, that increase, that double-digit increase that's global, has actually been much sharper. It's almost double in our region compared to other regions. So there's a much higher basis of increase, predominantly because our market here has been relatively cheap compared to the rest of the world. And so there's a lot of correction in premiums going on because we're coming out of a soft market. So I just want to talk a little bit about what a soft market is and what a hard market is. A soft market is basically where, you know, you can go in and there's lots of competition for your business. It's easy to get cover. It's easy to get low deductibles, and you're able to pick and choose much better in that market than you would in a hard market. We've had a soft market for over 15 years, and it's only in the last 2 years that we're starting to see a hardening market. In a hard market, basically the power goes towards the insurers. They get the say, they get to underwrite, they have lots of opportunities to look at business. And because we've actually had 4 Royal Commissions in our region over the last 3 years, we actually have now seen vast corrections, particularly in areas like directors and officers liability. So those have actually affected our premiums significantly, and one of the biggest increases in that rise in the Pacific premiums is in the financial services area. So directors and officers, particularly if you're a listed organisation, we're seeing increases that are vastly different to what they were even the previous quarter. And that means that if you're a listed organisation, directors and officers liability cover and premiums has become a great concern. For the liability classes, I want to, particularly for care organisations, this has actually been a fairly benign increase. It's been just under 10% has been the increase, as at the last quarter. And that, however, now, because we're, in the middle of the Aged Care Royal Commission just extending their report out to February from the original date of October, and the Disability Royal Commission, that obviously is continuing, that the liability aspects are now starting to pinch. What we're seeing with COVID-19 as well is that we're seeing that the pressure on care organisations to provide good quality care, disease, infection control, pandemic response planning, communication responses, means that liability to look after your third parties, your residents, the people in your care has become even more significant. So we're expecting to see that, particularly in the liability class of cover, that those increases will be more severe and the cover will be cut back. I just want to focus on the strategic drivers for aged care and disability care providers in particular. Well, I talked a little bit about the liability insurance market starting to increase and what those pressures might look like specifically for your organisation. The combination of, we've currently got 6 clients in Melbourne who, through no fault of their own, have got significant outbreaks in their facilities, and they've had to deal with, all sorts of issues. They've had to deal with residents being ill, lockdowns, communicating with upset family, and dealing with staff who are either stressed, ill themselves, not being able to work, changing rosters, and that's just COVID-19 by itself. Then that overlaid with the introduction of the Australian quality standards in July last year has meant that there's a whole changing platform for how aged care organisations specifically have to relate to compliance, and that is ongoing. That's fairly new. And the added pressure as well of having royal commissioners actually, having people submit evidence of lack of care in your organisation is significant. So what that means is normally what we see is with a Royal Commission, about 18 months after the Royal Commission produces its report, legislation starts to change. And the legislation that oversees both disability providers and aged care providers is already vast, and there's a lot to comply with. So there's so many moving parts to this. So that's in the area that affects you as an organisation. Then there's the insurance market, which I spoke about, and the pressures that you have to deal with there. Suddenly insurance is no longer a line item that you can just tick and leave off the agenda. You now have to have conversations to upline to your board significant budget increases, thinking about things like cash flow, how you're going to fund premium increases, and that's very different to even a year ago. As an organisation, you'd be dealing with your own strategy. You might be thinking about buying new properties. You might be in acquisition mode. You might want to be someone who wants to be acquired. You might have pressure on your bottom line. You might be, working out how do you onboard and train staff. You might have retention and attraction issues with your employees. You might be concerned about brand reputation, and really how do you manage, this extra piece on the insurance. So we see our key job, and really this is what this conversation is about partnering with your broker to help you actually put a risk and insurance program together, and that it's not a set and forget, it's actually something that you start working on and it becomes an organic part of your organisation. I want to talk about that strategy piece a little bit more. When I said it's not a set and forget, these days, given what you need to actually show insurers about your risk and about who you are as an organisation, that needs to start as a 3-year process. And that's particularly important if you have not invested time to understand how your insurances work, you haven't developed your risk appetite, and you're not very clear how your insurance program ties into your risk management framework. I'm going to be honest and say that, in the 3-year program, if you look at year 1, you will see that there's actually a lot of work for you as an organisation to do. We would ask you to look at things like, when's the last time you had a full insurance replacement valuation? When have you, what's your risk survey program look like? Have you done a business interruption insurance review lately? What's your pandemic response plan? How does that tie into your program? And what aspects do you want covered under your insurance program? So the sophistication of your approach to insurance is really necessary to allow your broker to go to market for you in a really clever and useful way, so that you can mitigate what's happening in the insurance market rather than be at the behest of it. So part of our strategy is really to sit down and say, well, over the next 3 years, what would you like to accomplish on your risk management program, and how can we use that to actually work with the insurance market to help you accomplish that? This might mean including people that you have not included in this discussion before. So this might mean including, your human resource people on what's happening with your workers' compensation insurance, for example, and how you want to put that in place. This might mean you would have closer conversations between your Chief Operations Officer and your CFO, and also your CEO, to work out what are the key strategies about how you're going to impact that. You might have to look at how are you reporting up to board? Are you going to be keeping them updated about what's happening with your insurance program and how you're developing that and how you're approaching the market? And using the tools that are in place to actually develop your risk management framework in a way that makes your insurance program not the be-all and end-all, but that it's actually taking off your balance sheet the things that you want off your balance sheet. The key strategies I just want to talk about with the pre-renewal is you need to plan early. So we're almost looking at both renewing the current program, but then immediately after that's renewed, what are we going to do for the next 12 months? So you've got to consider things like your capital input, how much money are you going to spend on repairing and maintaining things, which properties are you going to be protecting, and things like your analytics about where are you going to find the money to pay for higher deductibles. Do you need to actually set up and a special account in your P&L so that if you do get a big claim, you can pay it out of that. Those kinds of conversations, and a lot of those are largely internal. Also conversations with your claims team around, particularly if they're long-term claims like liability claims, how are those getting settled? What component of those can be actually closed off before renewal so that it doesn't affect your upcoming negotiations? How to actually present yourself to the market in a way that's actually really powerful and you get to sell your story. And one of the key strategies that we've been using is getting our clients to actually present directly to insurers. And that has been such a really useful and engaging thing to do for the underwriters, because they actually get to see themselves what a good risk your organisation is. You get to tell them about who you are and what you do, and we then get to use that information to go to market to help you get the best result. And all of that takes time. So I would think that if you're in the current market, if you have not been speaking to your broker at least 6 months before your renewal, that you need to get on and start having that conversation. The 3 key things that I'd like to leave you with from this discussion is to understand that the insurance market is in a certain state of the cycle that will impact you, and you need to be ready, prepared and engaged to navigate that market in a way that is good for your organisation. I'm also keen for you to make sure that you have everything you need to present your organisation in the best light possible to the insurance market, particularly given the reputational damage that aged and disability care providers are suffering in media, and also that there are many tools available for you to be able to put this together so that you can plan, prepare and also communicate up to your board and your executive on how to manage this difficult time.